Soul for a Soul by John Hope. Narrated by John Moe. Chapter 3. The Return. Augustine slogged down the dirt streets of Milan, the barking of vendors and banging hammer of a nearby carpenter offset by church bells ringing out a charming song. He jittered with concern over Bishop Loffredo's commission. Early spring's northerly breezes chilled Augustine's face and body. He hugged himself for warmth. He'd just canceled the hired wagon that was supposed to take him and his son to Genoa, where they planned to board a ship to Hippo Regius. There, Augustine was promised a prominent position in the church. The prospect of being instrumental in growing a new church had been enticing. In addition, the more space he could have placed between him and his Manichaean past, the better off he would have been. Theodosius's decree was still in effect, which meant the threat of Manichaeans being hung for heresy still loomed. But now Augustine needed to reverse his plan and possibly lose his window of opportunity. And for what? Augustine had expected to see Deodatus, the affectionate nickname he'd given his son, Audiodatus, waiting for him at the wagon, but the driver told him his son had gone into the city gardens. It wasn't unusual for the 18-year-old to spend hours reading there. An intellectual boy, Deodatus was patient and thoughtful. Nothing like Augustine had been at his age. In fact, Augustine was only 17 when he followed his physical desires and impregnated a married woman in Carthage, resulting in Deodatus's birth. The woman's husband, a Carthage aristocrat, wouldn't tolerate raising an illegitimate child, so he forced his wife to move out to the country and have the pregnancy aborted, while he told his elite circle she had miscarried. In truth, she had the baby and passed him on to Augustine, sending him and their love child off with a kiss and a satchel of gold coins. Augustine used the money to pay for both Deodatus's and Augustine's elite schooling, which found them at the center of Milan's upper class and on a first-name basis with the head bishop. Unfortunately, Augustine's indiscretions as a younger man meant he was Bishop Loffredo's go-to layman for tasks such as the one he'd been assigned today. Augustine turned the corner and headed down a path of relatively new woods. The city gardens used to be the site of Roman archery training. Now overgrown with vegetation, its various paths were still littered with broken arrows and cracked, discarded targets. "Augustine!" The outcry of a female voice broke the garden's serenity. Augustine spun around. A beautiful woman appeared from behind a bush, clad in a simple but colorful dress. She carried a woven basket. "Bellefour," he greeted one of his formal Manichaean lovers. She stepped toward him, her dress sweeping from side to side as she approached. "I thought you already left for Africa," she said, leaning in to give Augustine a light peck on his cheek. "Our trip has been delayed." "It doesn't have to do with that man and the boy, does it?" she asked. "You mean Brother Fides Albarello?" Augustine hung his head. "I'm afraid it has everything to do with that." "Oh." She swept a hand in the air as if swatting a fly. "Don't get mixed up in all that, Augustine. You risk your position in Hippo Regius." Augustine sighed. "Bishop Loffredo asked for my help directly." Bellefour's eyes widened. "Really? Why you?" Augustine lowered his brow. "You know why." She placed a hand on her bosom. Because of us?" He held her gaze. "Not just us. Because of all the Manichaeans I used to—" He swallowed. She stepped back. "You say that like we're some undesirables with whom you had unspeakable orgies." He barked out a hollow laugh. "It was never that bad." "Neither are we." She pulled out a handkerchief and flicked it at him. "Yet you dropped us like we were barbaric nomads. Why?" Augustine recoiled, unsure how to answer. He and his son had continued to practice Manichaean behind closed doors, even after they publicly declared themselves to be Christian, all while Augustine grew in prominence among Milan's Christian elite. But when Augustine heard talk of Roman officials traveling the greater empire to conduct another mass killing of Manichaeans, he cut ties completely with his Manichaean friends and committed his life to Christianity. Augustine's bold turnaround infuriated his fellow Manichaeans. Some even used his treacherous actions as reason to renew the strength of an underground resurgence, one that still threatened to topple the Christian church. A man emerged from the bushes behind Bellefour. "Isn't it obvious why?" Augustine knew his conversation with Bellefour was at an end the second he saw Galasso, Bellefour's brother. The muscular ironsmith pounded metal 10 hours a day, and his body showed it. Galasso crossed his huge arms. "You ran out to save yourself from the Emperor's decree." Augustine straightened his back. "I've had great opportunities in the Christian church, opportunities that are better served without my head on a platter." Galasso grunted and moved toward him. Augustine backed away. Galasso sidled by his sister. "Come, Bellefour, we've wasted enough time on this hypocrite." "Wait," Augustine pleaded with a raised finger. "Please, our conflicts aside, there's still a man missing, and an atrocious crime." "That's nothing of our concern," Galasso cut him off. "This is the Christian's black eye, not ours." He tugged at his sister's arms. Bellefour gave Augustine a wary glance as Galasso marched her up the path. Augustine remained rooted in place until the two had disappeared around a thicket of bushes. Finally, he resumed his search for Deodatus. Augustine rounded a large tree into a clearing where he spotted his son perched on a log next to a much younger boy. Nearing them, Augustine balked when he realized that the boy was Olmo, the one who'd accused Brother Fides of abusing him. "Deodatus." The two turned to Augustine, looking like they'd been caught doing something they shouldn't have. "Father?" Deodatus rose with Olmo at his side. I assumed your meeting with Bishop Lafredo would have gone longer." Olmo eased around Deodatus, shielding himself from Augustine. He gripped the back of Deodatus's cloak. Augustine frowned. "What are you doing with the boy?" Deodatus swallowed and shot a quick glance at the younger charge. Then he patted Olmo's hand. "Stay here. I need to speak with my father for a moment. I promise to return." Olmo glanced up at Augustine and nodded. Deodatus walked back up the trail from which Augustine had come. Augustine followed. From behind, Augustine marveled over how tall his son had grown. No longer a child, his sharp, narrow frame evoked signs of manhood. His beautiful face was his mother's, soft and supple. Once a safe distance from Olmo, Augustine asked, "Tell me what this is all about." "Look, I already said farewell to him, and I was going to tell you once we left for Hippo Regis, but after you told me Bishop Lafredo wanted to speak with you, I realized I'd better see Olmo right away, since it was going to take some persuasion to get anything out of him." Augustine waved his hands in front of him. "Hold on. You're getting too far ahead of yourself. Why were you with the boy to begin with?" "To console him, of course," said Deodatus. "Is it not our mission as Christians to help those in need? Olmo suffered a horrible trauma. He's terrified of all men now. He hasn't returned to services or his church duties since—" Augustine nodded. "So now his family's worried they'll expel him from his position." Augustine knew Deodatus meant the position of altar boy, a coveted job for a son's prospects and for his family's prestige among the city's elite. "He even tended the church goats," Deodatus said. "Such duties are a great honor for a boy his age. It was when I was 10. "So Olmo's terrified of men," Augustine probed. "But he talks to you." "Yes," Deodatus affirmed. "Don't forget I've been training altar boys for the past couple of years. I'm often a big brother to them. When I heard what happened to Olmo, I knew I had to save him, heal him." Augustine took a deep breath. He himself had been rebellious throughout his youth, and this wasn't the first time his son had followed in his footsteps, acting of his own accord without asking anyone's permission. Thankfully, although only 8 years older than Olmo, Deodatus had wisdom beyond his age. He spent hours every week assisting Milan's diocesan bishops. Over time, he assumed their mannerisms and fed off their patient understanding of life. When Deodatus was a mere 8 years old, Augustine recalled him bouncing through the church the day he heard he was accepted as altar boy, the youngest the church ever accepted. Before Deodatus, the minimum age was roughly 11 or 12. Deodatus's serious commitment, even at such a young age, convinced the bishops to change the church's policies. As proud of Deodatus as he was, Augustine occasionally caught glimpses of other fathers teaching their boys rizzola, an ancient game involving racing a rolling disc using twine, and swinging their boys above their heads and knocking them around in playful roughhousing. Augustine couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. Deodatus never liked such activities and opted for strangely precocious commitments to the church. Deodatus was the only real family Augustine had, and the fact that his son preferred the church over him hurt a little. Though Augustine knew he should feel the same joy Deodatus had, such joy couldn't be forced. Nevertheless, every aspect of his son humbled Augustine. "How'd I get so blessed with a son like you?" he wanted to ask. But such open honesty was hard for Augustine to muster. He struggled with a smile and hoped Deodatus could read his mind. Deodatus stared back. Augustine sighed. "You guessed right about Bishop Loffredo. He wants me to investigate what happened to Brother Fides." Deodatus nodded. "I assumed as much. But do we have to?" "Of course. At least, someone does." "Look what he did to Olmo. Have you considered it's best not to locate a man of such sin?" Augustine shook his head. "Deodatus, it's not our place to judge the sins of man. However, for the sake of the church, Brother Fides needs to be found, if for no other reason than to exonerate the Christian faith to the masses. You must understand the times, my son." Deodatus kicked the dirt and crossed his arms like a grumpy child. "I hate politics." "As do we all." Augustine patted his son's back. "What has Olmo told you so far?" Deodatus bit the side of his lip. "That's the problem. He just keeps talking about a demon. I suspect it's a metaphor or something he made up to mask what happened to him." Augustine stepped back. "A demon? What sort of demon?" "He said it was tall, thin, green, and scary-looking." Augustine tapped his chin. "What features? Did he mention anything specific?" Deodatus looked at his father strangely. I think he said it had goat horns. Oh, and slick skin, and wings." Deodatus shuddered at the image. "Unbelievable." Augustine hesitated. "Are you thinking it's not unbelievable?" Deodatus's brow tightened. Augustine clucked his teeth. "I'm just warning you not to rush to conclusions too quickly, my son. There are beings in this world and beyond that we are but on the cusp of understanding." Deodatus frowned. "But how?" he stammered, searching for the words. "How can a boy see a demon? I thought such things are only visible through God's eyes." Augustine shook his head. "You're thinking of this through only a Christian perspective. Other religions have had answers to these questions for centuries." "But they're wrong, aren't they? If the ancient scriptures omit the type of creature he's describing—" "Doesn't mean it can't exist," Augustine finished. "Nor does it mean the demon's purpose of possibly coming here is something other than what the revelation to John describes." Deodatus's eyes grew huge. "I know you think this talk to be heresy," said Augustine. "The Christian Church is solid in its beliefs. One God, one heaven, one hell, and clearly defined roles of all spiritual entities. But the more you learn about other beliefs, the more you realize how potentially incomplete existing Christian doctrine is. If my years of teaching religious studies have taught me anything, it's to keep an open mind." Deodatus continued to gape at his father. "So you think Olmo is telling the truth? That he witnessed a demon?" "I don't know. However, it would explain a few things." "Really?" Deodatus's face quirked in confusion. "What things?" A child's scream pierced the woods, followed by a muffled grunt. Augustine and Deodatus dashed down the path into the clearing where they'd left Olmo. They skidded to a halt in the damp grass. The boy was gone. Beside the log where Olmo and Deodatus had sat was a naked man curled in a fetal position, skin slick with a greenish slime. He looked like an aged newborn, trembling and vulnerable. Augustine and Deodata shared shocked expressions. The naked man jerked and moaned. He turned his head and squinted up at the pair staring down on him. Augustine gasped. "Brother Fides?"